Welcome back to Gold and Black Live. Mike Bobinski, always gracious with his time, and we appreciate that very much. And we will obviously talk a little football, a little basketball, a little sellout for volleyball as well. There's challenging things and there's some great things going on, and I get that. But let's get into the football first. Obviously, a report last week, Pete Thamel and ESPN talked about in his opinion, or at least his source, saying that there was a move to potentially give Ryan Walters another year, no matter how this season comes out. Any thoughts or on that, or any updates, or is that a report that may or may not hold any water in your opinion?
Sure. Did not speak to Pete myself, so obviously he's creating that from wherever his ear is to the ground. So I really don't want to, and I didn't read it because it doesn't do me any good to read.
Understood.
Someone else on the outside is thinking about. Let me just say this. Say a lot of things, to be honest with you, in and around football. First and foremost, how incredibly grateful I am and we are for our fans and their support, and how much I appreciate their passion around our program. I mean, that is, without that, you're struggling for success in every way. And I'm beyond grateful for the way our fans have continued to be supportive of us, and they need to know that we absolutely intend to reward their patience and their support in really significant ways in the years ahead. Football success in today's college athletic environment is not an optional thing. You've got to be good in football. You've got to find a way. Doesn't mean you're going to win them all. Nobody's going to win them all every year. That's just not the way this world's going to work. The Big Ten has gotten incredibly competitive. It was competitive before, but it's really even more so now with the addition of the teams from the West Coast and the way we schedule and all of that. So it's not lost on us at any level that how important it is to be successful in football. That is a priority. It's an everyday priority for us, and we will continue to work toward that end. This year so far, the results to date, 7 games in, frustrating, disappointing, unexpected, you name it, all of the above, all the frustration, all the angst that everybody feels. Hey, we feel it all day, every day. We're in this thing, as what we do for a living. And so we understand how that looks and feels, and it's not good. Get it completely. We've struggled and just been unable, to be honest with you, to find a way to play consistently high-level winning football. We have flashes, we have moments. We had an incredible second half at Illinois that could have and should have, and was right there to result in a win. But absent that and some other snippets along the way, we just haven't been able to consistently put together enough good football, and that's not what we're looking for. It will not be acceptable going forward. And so we continue to evaluate and to talk and think about how we might get better day in and day out here. That is clearly the goal. These last 5 games of the year is to find ways to improve, to continue to get better. I will say this, that I'm around it a lot. I watch practice. I watch closely what's going on. It's my job to do that, is to take the emotion out of it and sort of dispassionately evaluate and objectively evaluate. The team has stayed connected, incredibly connected. They've stayed connected to Coach Walters. They believe in him and his vision for where this program is going. Being able to take what I see in practice and convert it to the game field has been a challenge. It has not translated the way that you think it should and could, and that is an everyday dilemma that everybody's trying to solve. How do we do that? How do we take what we think we have available to us here in terms of ability and success and scheme and process and actually play winning football? So again, we hope to see more of that here as we progress through the end of the season. So I know that's a lot of talking. I'll let you ask me some questions so I don't drift all over the darn place here, Alan. But go ahead.
No, and that certainly hits on that. The evaluation, how you talked about how you do that. That is an ongoing process. Absolutely. And even a coach in his second year you hired him for 5 years, so you don't, you want to avoid. I'm again trying not to put words in your mouth, but you want this to succeed. But that evaluation does have to take place, and you do that. How often? I think people want to know too. I mean, I know I see you with Ryan on after press conferences. I know you have regular discussions with him, but how often does that transpire, and how do you stay? Because your job is to also encourage your team, and he's part of your team. But how does that transpire?
Absolutely, and that, to your point on that, it is my job to support our coaches across the board, every single one of them, and give them the support, the resources, whatever it might be, in order to be successful. With Ryan, particularly given the fact that he's still a very young head coach, we talk sometimes every day. I mean, we rarely miss a day at this point to talk at some level about what he sees, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, the changes that and adjustments that we're trying to make to move towards a higher level of success. So I do that on a very, very regular basis, and I think that's what's called for. Again, I hired him because I felt he was a incredibly intelligent, incredibly thoughtful, incredibly motivated and focused coach. I think, if anybody, his ability to sort of understand the game of football was demonstrated to me at an extraordinary level when he switched, having never coached an offensive position in his entire life, all of a sudden became the offensive coordinator out of necessity at that point in time, because we had to make a change there. But if I needed any more validation about sort of his command of the game, that's not in question for me. It's about, do we have all the right pieces in place? Do we have the right organization around him? Do we have the right talent? And as I've said to Ryan, the key when you're at the point that we're at right now, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. You have to objectively evaluate every single thing that we're doing, every approach that we're taking, every staff member, every player, and honestly, don't lower the standard in any case. You have to say, hey, in order to win in the Big Ten and to win at the level that we want to win at, can what we're doing, who's doing it, and how we're doing it, can that get us where we need to go? And you can't trick yourself. You can't say, well, it's good enough. Good enough doesn't cut it. Good enough is not what we're looking for here. We're looking for excellence. We're looking for high level success. And so making sure that we hold ourselves to that as we evaluate things moving forward here is really important. Being willing to have the courage to make whatever changes need to be made. I have no doubt that he's capable of that. And I'll if need be, I'll push as hard as I need to push, but I don't think that'll be necessary. I think we're very much aligned with the things that we see and the adjustments that we'll need to make going forward.
You look at that, and obviously in the world of public information, you see contracts, you see buyouts, all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. How much do you have to weigh a financial decision with, again, does it really truly come down to, can he do the job in your final evaluation? But there is a financial component if you do decide to part ways before the end of that 5-year contract.
Sure. Any organization, lives and dies around its economics and its finances. We get that. At the end of the day, though, I mean, we would never, ever allow the financial reality of a decision to defer that or to force us into a different position, because there's just too much at stake. There is for everybody. And we understand that. I understand that. The university understands it. And we'll make the decisions that we believe are supported by what we observe and the facts and belief that we have in our future going forward.
Yeah. When you look at the world today that it's changed so much in the last 2 to 3 years, but does that still in speed up the timetable? The fact that we're in a transfer portal world, we're in an NIL world, though that will change next year. How much does that play into? Boy, it's speed dating, not only by getting portal kids to come to Purdue, but also making sure that you can stay competitive each and every weekend.
I think that's sort of you have the two little guys sitting on your shoulders saying, hey, hurry up and do this. And the other one saying, hey, hold on a second here. Let's not just jump from left to right and, make wholesale quick trigger type of changes just because. I think, at the end of the day, I look at other programs that we have and, point to men's basketball as a tremendous example of continuity, consistency, a long sort of a slow burn of a build, and then you get to a tremendous place of success that's then sustainable. Football's, every sport's different. I get that.
Yeah.
But I think there are multiple ways to do this, and I don't think you should get blinded by the realities of this current environment. And really these last 2 years, and I'll go back to even Jeff Brom's last year with us, when the NIL world started to become really, really sort of upside down, and the transfer world, sort of in conjunction with the NIL craziness, created sort of lots of movement and lots of unrest and instability in and around the environment. That didn't play particularly well to our strengths. I will be honest about that. That's not. I'm not making an excuse. That's a fact. It just is a fact, and something that I think as we move into the new world will come back to us in some ways. There will be a leveling out of how you go about attracting and acquiring young recruits or transfer recruits that arm us with resources that will look very, very similar, if not identical, to the people we're competing against day in and day out. And that has not always been the case. That is not an excuse. It's just a reality that I think will adjust here as time goes by. So, there is certainly the finances matter, but again, that is not a driver of our decision at this point.
What's your message to Ryan now, even though, because it's recruiting still go on? Yes, every program has decommits and those kind of things happen. But that, and you've got to be geared up for the wonderful world of the transfer portal. How do you say, we're behind you, we got to keep moving in this direction? What's your message from that standpoint?
Well, I think we just talk about the activities that are underway, the recruiting focus that we have, the needs that we have from a position perspective, where we clearly need either frontline or really quality depth in order to give ourselves a fighting chance here to sustain a 12-game season and hopefully more as time goes by, for sure. So we just there's no. He understands that that is part of his job, it's part of his staff's job. So they are actively working towards that end. The decommits are part of today's reality.
Yeah.
It just is. What happens when a team is struggling, folks will call a recruit or reach out to a recruit and say, "Hey, have you thought about decommitting?" And so next thing you know, it's like, "Hey, let's decommit." That sounds like the thing to do. And that, not to say I'm unconcerned, is probably, I don't mean to be dismissive of it at all. But at the end of the day, I think when you ultimately get to reconstructing your roster for the future, we'll end up with the right young men and the young men that truly belong and want to be at Purdue. That's ultimately the way Purdue teams have always been successful, and that's the way we'll be successful in the future.
You talked about Purdue's niche, or I've heard you speak about this in the past, and what Purdue can offer, from an academic standpoint, and really what the mission of all this is. Gets very clouded, and we all can be a little bit cynical based on what we're seeing. With Ryan's situation and the football and all your programs, does that continue? And do you plan to have that to be a competitive advantage over time? The fact that this is a lunch pail university, this is a university that wants to give, even from its academics to its athletics, at least in my perception, wants to be work harder and smarter than the other programs. How much of that plays into what maybe Ryan can continue to deliver for your team moving forward?
I absolutely agree with that, Alan. And I think your point about that being a competitive advantage for us is something that, we need to, I think, emphasize even more as we move forward, as the recruiting resource world levels out here, assuming things hold together in the settlement and all, for 25 and out. I think you then are able to really focus on those other elements that you bring to the table. For us, I think we should double down on that identity and really build our football program around those types of young men. Ryan's, the three hallmarks that he talks about are being competitive, being tough, being disciplined. As I bluntly told him at one point during our tough stretch here, I didn't think we were hitting the mark on any of those three.
Yeah.
And so we're making sure that we, and then he takes all that on, very well. He doesn't. He's a very thoughtful and willing listener and doesn't buck up against honest conversation, which I appreciate very much. But I told him, I said, I didn't think we were doing any of those three things, and that refocusing on that is ultimately how Purdue teams will be successful. That is ultimately, I mean, it's pretty universal around it. All teams have to be that at some level, but if you have overwhelming talent, there's a greater margin for error. But if you don't have overwhelming talent, which has never really been our thing in any sport, you've got to have all those other elements in place. You've got to be really competitive. You've got to be ultra tough. You've got to be buttoned up from a discipline and accountability perspective. And I think doing all of that at a higher level is definitely in store for us.
All right, last question on football. You have dealt with coaches in your professional life, all your professional life, in your times as an AD and before. How do you keep, from the mental aspect and keeping coaches? Ryan at 38 years old is now in his his second year of being a head coach, but working to keep themselves mentally positive in a tough environment, because you do have to walk. You got to tell them, hey, we're not hitting our three things, but how have you done that over the years, and how do you doing that now with not only with Ryan but any coach that might be struggling in your program?
I think the key thing, just like in any relationship like that, whether it be in a business world or any other organization, you have to be present. You have to be available. You have to be a willing listener. You have to let people say what's on their mind, what's bothering them, and then offer what you believe is appropriate feedback. Again, it's no athletic director's job to tell any coach how to coach their team or how to, what kind of offense to run. But it is my job to pose questions and to sort of plant seeds of thought and hopefully move coaches in any sport in a positive and more successful and fulfilling direction from a program perspective. And that's how we do it with Ryan, how I do it with Ryan. We just have honest and open conversation about all things. And I appreciate that about him, that I don't have to filter. He does, and I'd like to think he doesn't feel the need to filter what he tells me in terms of his observations and approach to how we want to move this thing forward. So it's a healthy dialogue. At the end of the day, as he said at the press conference the other day, this is a performance-based business. We all get it. We all understand that. Results ultimately are what determines the outcome and how things move forward. Period. And we all, again, that is understood by everybody.
Anything else, from this perspective, as we put a close to the football discussion, and we will hit a little NIL, but anything else that, is an important message to the fan base, people that might be watching this from your perspective? You've hit on a lot of topics here, but I want to make sure I didn't miss something.
I just say, I don't want to plead for anything our people have been great. Our fans have been wonderful. They've been great. We have a tremendous group of young men in that locker room. We are really blessed. We got a lot of really good guys that are about the right things. They want success. They're thirsting for success, and I think we all are frustrated, them included, by their inability, our collective inability to show what we believe we're capable of. And so, knowing that they're young people that are striving for success and having difficulty achieving it, the best thing you can do is just continue to support them at this point in time. I think that's just and that's what Purdue people do. Purdue is about building people up to higher levels of success. That's one of the wonderful things about this university. It's not a place that tries to chew people up and spit them out. It's trying to uplift people, and I think doing that to the best of our ability, but also holding us accountable for success at some level. I get it. That's not unreasonable, and that's I'm 100% on board and comfortable with that.
One question that I should have mentioned earlier, and I want to ask: is it important, and as you look at these last 5 games, and this may be somewhat rhetorical in nature, but you have peer programs. Northwestern we're in a similar situation to where Purdue is, maybe Michigan State as well. In that evaluation process, how do you view, like Saturday's game against Northwestern is a game that's supposed to be very close. How important is that as you gauge Ryan's ability down the stretch to get the job done in the last 5 games and in the future?
Sure. We want to win games down the stretch here. That is the goal. And ultimately that's how everybody's measured in this profession. Right? That's how coaches are measured. They either win or their teams either are successful or they're not. So that is certainly part of it. It's more than that, obviously. When you are where we are, there are some built-in limitations in who we are right this moment. From a certain positions, we're just not maybe as deep and as gifted as we'd like to be. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't find ways to put our collective group in a position to be successful. So I want to see some success. I think we all want to see success, but at the very least, we want to see a higher level of execution and performance.
All right, fair enough. All right. Any updates on that on the house situation and with respect to next year? I mean, there's still a lot of litigation out there. It's kind of if my head is half exploding, I can only imagine where yours is, because it's just I don't know. Anyway, any new news on that front, or where that might be as of November 1st?
Well, it all still sits, from a pure process standpoint, it still sits with the judge and in the legal sort of calendar, where there's a period of time that's prescribed by law where people can form or present challenges or suggest revisions to the terms of the settlement. That period ends, I believe, January 31st or thereabouts of 2025. So there's a couple months of that yet to run. And then the judge has time to deliberate. And I believe the first week or so of April when we expect to have some sort of a final resolution. The reality is we can't wait until April to begin to function and to think and strategize about how we're going to execute in this new world. And so that is well underway at Purdue and at all of our peer campuses around the league and around the A5 and elsewhere. So we are working actively to think about how we're going to implement the terms of this settlement and execute to it. Period. We are assuming that it's going to be approved, and basically in substance or substantively as it's laid out today in the document and in the ruling that was preliminary approved. And so we are working towards that end. It will add $20+ million of brand new expense to what we're doing here at Purdue, and that is a daunting number. It's a daunting number for any organization, for any athletic department, but it's one that we are fully intending to be able to manage with assistance from the university and creativity and other ways. We're going to allow our coaches and our teams to be able to participate and be supported at the same level as everybody else in terms of that, and that's the only way we'll ultimately be successful, and that's our intention to do so.
All right. I saw you at the Wednesday night's game against Grand Valley State. You have a talented basketball team on your hands. You know that already, and you've seen it. But just talk about Matt Painter. The year after, so to speak. This is a dynamic group. I mean, it's if you're a fan, I always say if you just sit back and enjoy great college basketball, this team may lose games. It probably will. But those freshman guards just alone or a Wednesday night were enough to get your attention. But going to be an interesting year. But you've watched a lot of basketball and been at the highest levels. What do you like about this group?
Yeah, I do. I like the interchangeability, the ability to play different styles. We've been, the last couple of years with very good reason. We were really focused around an incredible talent in Zach and his influence on the game, on the offensive side and on the defensive side, and now being able to play some different ways. Will we miss Zach? Hell yeah, you're going to miss a two-time National Player of the Year and a lottery pick. It's impossible not to miss somebody like that. But I do really think we have a chance to be really a problem for lots of teams with the different combinations. The raw intelligence of our returning veterans and Trey Kaufman-Wren, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith. I mean, those guys know how to play college basketball. They understand all the nuances. Fletcher Lawyer is probably the craftiest player. I mean, he draws more foul. He just knows what he's doing out there at a really high level. And you mentioned the freshman guards. They've been fearless from day one. I mean, they did not back away from competition, from taking on Braden, taking on Fletcher in competitive environments from day one. And I think that shows very quickly that, those guys are game ready. It doesn't mean they won't make mistakes. Doesn't mean that they won't grow into it like every freshman has to. Are they great off the ball on defense? I've never seen a freshman that's great off the ball on defense ever in the history of the game. It's never happened. So to expect them to be fully formed on day one, and same thing with our big guys. With Raleigh, with Daniel, those guys are not going. And even Will, who's survived 2 years of beatings from Zach in practice every day. He hasn't had a lot of game action, so they're gonna grow and develop as we work through the course of this year, and I think it's going to be very, very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, last question, kind of circling back to the Purdue fan base and its support, and that is Purdue volleyball, tremendously successful on the 19th and 26th of October, consecutive sellouts against Indiana and Wisconsin. And I get it. It speaks to Purdue fans in terms of just wanting to support a winning program. Of course, Dave Shondell's program has been at a very high level. But when you look back at that, what does it mean? I mean, does it mean that women's sports continues to be on the uptick? Does it mean that Dave Shondell's product is ready? I mean, you're going to play in Holloway Gym. I get that. But just tell me what is your takeaway from those consecutive sellouts?
I think it means a little bit of all of that, Alan. I think you captured it really well. Our fans love to support people that compete hard, and our volleyball program does that. I mean, those young ladies are tremendous athletes. They play hard. It's such an exciting and fast game, and we were beyond. It was a tremendous environment. It just was. Both nights or both games in Mackey I thought was really a great statement about our volleyball program, women's athletics in general. The fact that you can fill Mackey up for a 3-hour or 2.5-hour volleyball match is just awesome. And I think people really enjoyed the whole scene. Our students showed up, which was great to have them have a real presence at those matches. So it was all good. I mean, there was no downside to that at all. Obviously, we ran into Wisconsin on a day when they were playing incredibly solid and strong volleyball, and they're a team that's going to be a real problem for people as the year goes on. As they've gotten healthy, they have tremendous size like they always do. They're really good, but so are we, and I think we'll put ourselves in a really good position. Have another opportunity in the postseason to play. I hope deep into it, and that program is really, really in great shape.
All right. Well, hey, Mike, thanks so much for your time. It is a busy time for you. It is a wonderful convergence of all these sports in November. Yeah. Women's basketball had an exhibition game as well this week, and will open up its season next week as well, home season too. So, Mike, we wish you well down the road here with everything that's going on, and we're so thankful for your time today. Really insightful interview, and we appreciate that very much. We will stay tuned. In a couple minutes, we'll have Tim House, somebody that has nothing to do with the House decision, but he's kind of his own person from that standpoint. But we'll look forward to talking to Tim as well. So stay tuned for the next segment on Gold and Black Live.